we don't have delegated powers signed off that this is what you do, this is what you are doing.
Tell me what it is, Mr. Mathale, that you do every day when you go to work.
It can either be things that have to do with the civilian secretariat for police.
Does South Africa really need deputy ministers? It's topical, and it starts right now. A very good evening to you, South African, those watching around the world. My name is Blaine Herman, and this is It's Topical. We have to start here. The Proteas women, what a remarkable achievement. Rewriting history. South Africa, first-time finalists in the ICC Women's ODI World Cup. It's a testament to their resilience. It's a testament to their teamwork. No matter what the result is, we are so proud of them and so proud to be a South African tonight. Still, we have to deal with a few bounces, a few curveballs, so to speak. The revelations at the Ad Hoc Committee this week have left many saying it's simply not cricket. Were you stumped when Deputy Police Minister Mathale told the Ad Hoc Committee in Parliament that he doesn't have any other better explanation on the issue of Police Minister Senzo Mchunu not giving them delegated authority up to now, except to say he was still familiarizing himself. Mathale says that they don't have delegated powers signed off, but he adds that they do have work to do, saying it's not like they just sit around in the office not knowing what to do. He says he has a program that guides him. How does that sit with you? It raises material questions. Some have questioned whether the deputy minister position is a waste of taxpayers' money. How do you feel about it? Do you agree, or do you place value on that position to streamline the workflow? It leads us to the question of the week, and we're asking you, what's your take on Cassel Mathale's revelation that a year later, the police deputy ministers don't have delegated powers signed off? What does it say about the effectiveness and the accountability of South Africa's deputy ministers? Let us know at SABC News_TV. We are also opening up the lines tonight. 011-714-0677-7879. That number again, 011-714-0677-7879. We'll chat in a short while. Let's get you some context. And as always, we head to the magic wall. What did you make about the testimony so far that you heard at Ad Hoc, that you heard at the Nhlanhla Commission? We'd love to hear your thoughts at SABC News_TV. Perspective coming up. All right, just for some context, right? The cabinet consists of the president, deputy president, and ministers. Deputy ministers are appointed to assist the ministers with their duties, but are not members of cabinet, even though they are part of the executive branch of government. I want to get you more context now, and as always, we turn to the magic wall, what we know and why it matters. Samkele Maseko is in the house tonight. He is SABC News politics reporter. Good to see you, sir.
Very good. Thank you for inviting us, Blaine.
Busy news week, busy news day. We're monitoring a number of things, but we also hear reporting of a retreat, a meeting that the president has apparently called. What are we learning more about that at this hour?
Yes, indeed. The president has called a retreat of all leaders of the Government of National Unity of Political Formations within the GNU, Nhlanhla of the IFP, leaders of the Freedom Front Plus, you go to the leaders of other political formations such as the Patriotic Alliance. All of them are there within this particular retreat. Mzwaleni Nyons of the PAC, they are also there. This retreat is basically to iron out some of the differences that are there within the Government of National Unity, particularly the big brother syndrome that is there between the African National Congress and the Democratic Alliance to smaller parties within the Government of National Unity, the friction that is there between the ANC and the Inkatha Freedom Party in KwaZulu-Natal. Just yesterday, the Secretary General of of the ANC and the national chairperson, Gwede Mantashe, were engaging with the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal with the IFP provincial leadership led by Premier Tamintuli and provincial chairperson of the IFP, Tamintuli, in KwaZulu-Natal yesterday. So essentially what is going on today with this two-day retreat of the president of the country, Cyril Ramaphosa, with leaders of parties in the government of national unity, is to iron out economic policy framework differences, particularly the DA's attack on affirmative action, the DA's attack on broad-based black economic empowerment, and South Africa's foreign policy attack by the Democratic Alliance. Those are some of the issues that are going to be ventilated in this retreat that is chaired by the president and also with his co-driver being the deputy president, Paul Shepokosa Mashatile.
Did we know about this? And if not, why the hush-hush?
It was not publicized, this particular meeting. We first got wind of it yesterday that is going to take place, but the president had sent these invitations out about a month or so ago to leaders of political parties. I do know I posed the question to the DA Federal Chairperson Helen Zille during the course of the week if President Ramaphosa and John Steenhuisen had threshed out some of the country's economic policy, particularly noting the week-long tour the president had in some of the Asian countries during the course of the week. He was accompanied by the Minister of Agriculture, John Steenhuisen, who also happens to be the leader of the Democratic Alliance, and noting how the president has been vociferous in saying that broad-based black economic empowerment is not going anywhere, and issues of economic policies that speak to the redress and the restructuring of the South African economy are not going to be stepped aside and put in place just so that the Democratic Alliance can take power through the back door.
Also, the issue of the framework of the budget will be a sticky point as well, so we don't have a repeat of what we saw this year. Reporting on the president's future in today's papers. What are we learning in terms of that in the lead up to the local government elections?
Cyril Ramaphosa is a different kind of breed of a leader within the African National Congress. He's not a person that would instantly respond to various attacks, as he said, that he plays the long game, and sometimes that long game takes too long and there are negative effects to his own presidency. So one wouldn't truly know whether he is contemplating leaving, but I have fielded some calls. I won't say from who, but I had a very interesting call about a month ago, and that call lasted for about an hour. And that person was just trying to find out the political machinations that are going on within the governing party, the alignment of leaders within the African National Congress, where they stand with the president. But interestingly, one of the biggest defenders of the president of the country and the president of the ANC, it's his Secretary General, Fikile Mbalula. Previously, you would see that the SG and the president of the ANC would be at loggerheads. You'd remember during the era of former President Zuma, in the first 5 years of Zuma, Gwede Mantashe was one of the biggest defenders of Jacob Zuma when he's under attack in the public domain. But internally in the ANC, he would take a charge at him, discipline him when he needs to be disciplined, correct him when he needs to be corrected. Even in his latter part of his second term, that was the nature of their relationship until the firing of the then Minister of Finance, which then prompted the weekend special, which is then ultimately you saw Gwede Mantashe launching an offensive against Jacob Zuma. The same with Fikile Mbalula. Unlike Ace Magashule and Cyril Ramaphosa, where it was a frictious relationship from the beginning, where Ace said it's a matter of 5 years. But Mbalula seemingly is the one who says that Cyril Ramaphosa can't leave at an early stage before the ANC goes to its national conference and before the national election, because ultimately that will destabilize the government of national unity, that will destabilize the ANC, that will be problematic for the ANC's upcoming conference in 2027. So if he were to ultimately leave, the ANC may face an implosion.
Look, because it's out there, do you think that is likely to come up at this meeting of GNU partners, or it's more likely that he'll discuss it with the top leadership of the ANC before, and the alliance, of course, before pronouncing anything on it?
It would be unorganizational of him to discuss a sensitive nature like this to leaders of the opposition going towards an election in 2026 in the local government elections. It would be very unorganizational of him. It would be giving ammunition to his political detractors, like the mistake he made at the roll call praising the Democratic Alliance, which was mistakenly taken otherwise by South Africans. Yet you are speaking about the budgetary framework and the auditing framework of governance within the DA-led municipalities. But organizationally, he would first have to engage with the ANC officials and take them into confidence on why he's taking such a decision to cut his term of office short. But it also comes as a tradition that ANC presidents no longer finish their term of office in government, like Thabo Mbeki, like Jacob Zuma, Cyril Ramaphosa is trying to avoid that frictious tension that may arise between two centers of power.
I explained this earlier on with regards to the deputy minister issue. That was the news of the day. Let's get back to the topic of tonight. The constitutional role of the deputy ministers. What is the reason often given why a deputy minister can't be appointed as a minister when the incumbent is not there on leave, for instance?
Deputy ministers are not part of the executive. Thus, they cannot be made to act in ministerial positions. For instance, if you look at this current conjuncture, the Minister of Water and Sanitation is ill and has been off work for quite some time, but no acting minister has been appointed. At this point in time, the deputy minister, that would be David Mahlobo, he is running with some of the issues the department needs to be present of. But when it comes to the signing off of executive authority of the department, they then have to take them to the Minister of Water and Sanitation, who's currently recuperating from home after she came back ill from a trip abroad. So you do find instances where the deputy minister does perform the functions, but can't effectively sign off on some decisions without the minister being the one who signs them off. So they don't have that executive authority, and thus they can't act as ministers. And hence you see with some ministers when they are on suspension, just like how Police Minister Senzo Mchunu was placed on suspension, Gwede Mantashe was made to act as the police minister. They could not take Cassel Mathale, they could not take Poli Bushielo to act.
So a clear increase in terms of the deputy ministers from 2023-2024 to 2024-2025. You put this on the GNU, right?
This is on the GNU. This is political expediency at best explained. This is a reward for cadres. This is a reward for those who belong to other political parties who need to be represented within government. You remember the Democratic Alliance would speak vociferously saying that there's no need for deputy ministers. You must cut cabinet short. But since they came into government, cabinet has been bloated. But interestingly, they have not put forward a name to replace the deputy minister they had at Trade and Industry and Competition, Andrew Whitfield. So it's going to be rather interesting on how they deal with this particular matter going forward, noting that the call by ActionSA for the doing away of deputy ministers has been given much vigor by the revelations done by Deputy Minister Cassel Mathale at the Ad Hoc Committee looking into the shenanigans currently happening within the South African police service and the criminal underworld that is currently there. But in all, if you look at the role of deputy ministers from former President Mandela to President Mbeki, to President Nhlanhla, to President Zuma, to President Ramaphosa, they've increased over the course of the years and have exponentially grown under President Ramaphosa in the government of national unity to be a sweetener to political parties joining government.
Well, let's see how sweet this number sit with people. We've got this from the Proclamation Notice 167 of 2024. Annual salary of a deputy minister over 2 million, right? That's equivalent to about 7.9 million monthly in terms of all. This is the figure for the yearly, over 95.3 million per year. The question is, are they worth the money, the expense that we pay?
Some of them are, some of them are not. I want to use David Mahlobo as a classic example. Many South Africans know David Mahlobo for nefarious things, particularly around the Gupta era, his days in state security. But if you look at how David Mahlobo, under Senzo Mchunu as Minister of Water and Sanitation and other ministers, was able to try to a relative extent to solve the water crisis that persisted in Emfuleni, with sewage running through the streets, with the water treatment plant that was built, with the deployment of the African National Defence Force. Some ministers whom are deployed through their competency of what they studied at school and are able to be deployed within those departments, at times are proven to be very effective. I use David Mahlobo as an example because he's got a qualification in chemical engineering, which looks at the purification of water engineering within the country. And his deployment within water and sanitation has been able to give him that background to try and give South African reliable water supply that they can drink with the water reticulation projects and the projects of building of dams, bulk infrastructure for water that is being built in various boards of water boards that are there within the country. So that is a relatively good deployment, deploying someone with the competency that they have. You go to a Zuko Kodlimbi as an example, a young economist by training, proving to be very knowledgeable within the economic space. But other deputy ministers, it's just an issue of being deployed because you're a Democrat, or being deployed because you're a cadre, or because you are part of the Inkatha Freedom Party or any other political formation. So there are pros and cons to it.
We'll test this. Thank you, sir, for your time as always. Go enjoy the cricket. Samkela Maseko is SABC News senior politics reporter. Look, it's the big story of the night, right? I want to get you the very latest. We'll keep tabs on this story as well as we start our discussion. SABC News sports anchor Zondo is live for us in Rosebank, watching the final with some fans. Any nails left there, Poli?
Blaine, I can tell you that it is a mixture of excitement and nerves. But from many people here, many a fan here, knowing that these celebrations are imminent, we are on the cusp of making history. Of course, having already made history as the Proteas women reaching their first ever final of an ODI World Cup. First team to do so, whether men or women. And of course now have a golden opportunity to win it. They just need 299 runs. That was the target that was set, of course, by India. So at the moment, the Proteas women 141 for the loss of 4. And of course, I do have with me, individuals that are very instrumental in terms of Cricket South Africa, getting the word out there about this phenomenal team. I mean, just the reception, Sanele, in terms of what people have been saying about the Proteas women and the fact that they've made history. Share a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think it's what the Proteas women have done has been really good for not just women's cricket but women's sport generally. Laura and the way she's led a team has been quite inspirational. And yeah, I think it's very encouraging to see the way that they've gotten to the World Cup final, just their run into where they are now. Very exciting. We're holding our fingers crossed, obviously, hoping that they can go over the line.
Absolutely. And of course, we know in terms of them winning the toss, opting to field first. What do you make of that fielding, and the bowling performances of the likes of Ayaka Kaviwe?
Aya did an amazing job. I think getting those wickets for us broke a lot of the partnerships in between, and some of the players that were quite threatening in that process. So we were quite excited to see that happen in real time. So it was really, really good. I think that we were great chasers. So knowing that we give a team the opportunity to set the score for us, we know that our batting lineup is also quite strong. So we are great chasers, proving time and time again that in the team spirit itself, we are unbreakable.
Absolutely. I remember just the celebrations here at Jozi when Ulefti got the wicket of the captain, Harmanpreet. And of course now, at least getting under that 300 mark, even though it wasn't as much, the 298. And now, of course, we need to get to 299. But we look at the likes of Brits who were dismissed, who had a run out. The likes of Bosch dismissed for a duck. Just the batters. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I think as long as Laura Volfart is still in the game, we still have a good chance. And it comes down to partnerships at the end of it. So we have a long batting lineup. And like I say, as long as Laura Volfart is there, she can get us over the line. It just comes down to whoever can stick with it at the end, and then just the runs on the back end, and I'm very confident that the girls can get the victory.
And we speak about a Laura Volfart that has done incredibly well. We know in the last outing, getting those 169 runs, and of course now has already managed that half a century. With her is the wicket keeper, of course, Sinalo Jafta, and it's looking like she's holding down her own.
Yes, she definitely is. I think it's a great run for her to be able to step up to the field at this point, and also for her team in the final. I think it's also just handling that pressure quite well. Coming in the middle when it's such a high pressure game is also something that needs you to be steadfast in your brain and in your confidence in the game. So she stepped up quite beautifully.
And Viwe, what has also been so intimidating is the crowd, the noise that they make playing in India, so intimidating, but they've contained it so well.
Yeah, no. I think also it's a mental game. It's definitely a mental game. In one of Kapi's interviews, she mentioned that she's taking the crowd and convincing herself that they're cheering for her. So I think that's also quite beautiful in playing that mental game. Like it's really done the team quite well.
All right, and we are doing this, right, Sanel?
We are doing it definitely. As long as Laura's in the game, we've got a chance.
Sanel and Ovi were there just saying Laura, and really because Wolfie has been such a fantastic captain, she's still on the crease and of course approaching that century mark for the Proteas women. They just need to make sure that they get a solid partnership. It's still looking steady between Wolfart and of course Jafta, and just a couple of runs there. You know, Sanel, if we can just take a look in terms of what the Proteas need to get just for victory. But at the moment they are of course 146 for the loss of 4, and of course Blaine, knowing that we are so close to winning our very first World Cup trophy.
Guts to have faith, my sister. I'm sure they will do it. We're all green tonight. Koli Zondo there, live for us in Rosebank. We'll keep tabs with Koli. We'll go back to her when there's developments. Keep you up to date with the scores as well. Keep it locked on to SABC News. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, our main discussion, deputy ministers. Is there need for deputy ministers in South Africa? Discussion next. Welcome back. You're watching It's Topical. Deputy ministers in South Africa very much in sharp focus. We've got a number of guests lined up to weigh in on this matter. Karabo Khakhau is DA's national spokesperson. MK Party's MP David Skosana joins us as well. We're also joined by Nhlanhla Hadebe, IFP Chief Whip, and Athol Trollip, who is ActionSA's parliamentary leader. Thank you so much indeed for joining us, everyone. Please note as well that we did invite the ANC as well as the AFF. They weren't available for the discussions. Karabo, maybe I can start with you. DA initially agreed to be part of the government of national unity. There was 12 cabinet ministers, 12 cabinet and deputy ministers, so it's 6, not 6, 7, 6. Can you confirm that all your deputy ministers have been assigned duties, first of all?
Good evening, Blaine. Thank you so much for having me, and good evening to the people of South Africa. I cannot confirm that all of them have been delegated officially, which is a problem, as you are rightly identifying right now. Because in order for them to function their constitutional duty as mandated by Section 93 of the Constitution, it is the responsibility of the minister to officially give those delegations to ministers. Now, it must be clear to understand here that just because a minister did not give a deputy minister their delegated functions, it doesn't mean it renders the deputy minister useless. It means the minister is reneging on their job to make sure that everybody within the ministry functions optimally. It is the responsibility of each and every minister to give their deputy minister their scope of work. I'll give you an example. You have let's go to water and sanitation, as Sam Gelo pointed out. That ministry has 2 deputy ministers, one David Mathale from the ANC and 2 Sello Sikhulo of the Democratic Alliance. In that ministry, we have an issue such as the environment, and the green scorpions, their functions as far as making sure that the municipalities do not deviate from the prescripts of what environmental health codes dictate. And that is something that falls directly within Sello Sikhulo's responsibilities. And so he's able to function properly and give the people of this country representation as far as environmental health is concerned.
And Nhlanhla, Karabo can't confirm that all deputy ministers have been assigned their duties. And then it just begs the question, because government is running, do we really need deputy ministers? Your party has 2 deputy ministers in government. What's your take?
Thank you so much. Firstly, I would want to confirm that our deputy ministers have been given or assigned duties by their respective ministers. Secondly, I would want to say that, of course, there is a need for the government to have deputy ministers. In fact, deputy ministers are a constitutional and operational necessity for any government to improve service delivery and to ensure that departments run or function smoothly. So their existence, in fact, is enshrined in the Constitution of the Republic, specifically, as you have alluded when you were talking to Samgelo, that Section 93, subsection 1A of the Constitution makes that provision for the government to have deputy ministers.
Athol, Trollip, I can put my money on this, that you don't agree. I know that there is a private members bill before Parliament currently that ActionSA has initiated, and you want to amend the Constitution to abolish the position of deputy ministers. Why? Athol, if you can unmute, sir. Let's try that. Oh, I think we're still having a bit of issue on that. Let's try one more time, Athol. All right, we'll come back to you in a short while, Athol. We're having a bit of an issue with regards to Athol's mic. We'll try to sort that out in a short while. Karabo, back to you. The issue of Andrew Whitfield, replacement as a deputy minister. It's been, what, about 4 months now. What's the holdup?
Okay, first of all, the party's leadership is finalizing that process. You would know that our party's FedEx would have the final say around who gets to be sent to where. And I can confirm with 100% authority that we are in the final stages of being able to fill that post. So that is one. Number two, I would have loved to answer the question of whether they are necessary too, because I think they are necessary. The problem here that we must be able to be frank about, Blaine, is that for the longest of time, the people of this country have, for 31 years, been battling with a government that hasn't been as efficient and as effective as the people of this country would have desired. The levels of service delivery, not on a national level, provincial level, in most parts of this country and local government, is pretty much deplorable. So it only makes sense for the people of this country to wonder, if these people, if things are not as great as they're supposed to be, are the people who are responsible for making sure that things happen actually necessary, or are they just useless, right? And that's a fair question. So the problem here isn't that the deputy ministers as a function and as a role is not necessary. The only reason why a deputy ministry post becomes a useless post is if the person occupying it is useless in what they are doing altogether.
Here's the pushback, Karabo. Here's the pushback before you go to number three. Your party in the not too distant past, I think it was back in 2018, was complaining about a bloated cabinet. And at that time, there was 35 ministers and 37 deputy ministers. Why have you, I mean, given that that was under the leadership of Mmusi Maimane, but the principle should stand, right? You call that a bloated cabinet. Why the change of tune now?
So let's be clear. We still believe that we don't need all the ministries we have in this country. That is still a firm position of the Democratic Alliance. We can cut down on ministries that exist. We don't need all of them. We don't have to be as bloated. That's number one. Number two, the country certainly doesn't need two deputy ministers for each and every minister that exists. And it's very clear to see what happened here, Bain, if we're assessing how we moved from 37 to 43 deputy ministers while still having a total of 32 ministers in the country. It's quite frankly because when you look at the split of political parties and who's deployed, it was the President Ramaphosa used this opportunity to still give the ANC power, which they were not yet willing to share 100%. Let me demonstrate to you with figures, for example, right? Within the GNU partners, all 10 members, The ANC constitutes 55% of the voter share within the GNU, which means with the current composition of government, right, they are supposed to have 18 ministers, but they have 20. They're supposed to have 24 deputy ministers, but they have 33 deputy ministers. While the DA, for example, with 87 seats constituting 30% of the voter share in the GNU, are technically supposed to have 10 seats, but we 10 ministers, but we only have 6. We're supposed to have 13 deputy ministers, but we only have 6, right? But also, even the numbers of deputy ministers that I'm referring to don't have to be that large, because you don't need deputy ministers. It makes absolutely no sense why it just for the health of the country's fiscus and the trust of the GNU, that we could be satisfied that Phemima Jodina as an ANC minister could safely have Sello Sikhulo as a deputy minister from the Democratic Alliance alone without David Mahlobo.
Right. I want to get Athol's take here, and I see David is also having a bit of an issue with his son. Athol, can you hear me? Let's give it a try. No. Okay. What we're going to do is going to take a quick break. We'll try to fix up your son, Athol. We'll try to get his take on this matter, proposing a constitutional amendment with regards to the positions of deputy ministers. What do you say? At SABC News _TV 011-714-0677-7879. Give us a call. Welcome back. You're watching It's Topical. Straight to the discussion. David Skosana, talk to us about your party's take regarding deputy ministers. The argument being pushed forward would be rather get competent ministers and do away with deputy ministers. Agree, disagree?
Good evening, and good evening to your viewers at home. There's nothing wrong with the deputy ministers. The issue is that we are bloated. We are completely bloated when it comes to that. The increment from 37 to 43 tells you that it was patronage. You know, it's a political luxury. You know, it's catered the deployment, you know, that the president felt that because of the GNU, he has to increase the deputy ministers and 2 ministers as well in the cabinet. But I wanted to correct Samgelo. Samgelo missed the point. One, I want to say when it started, he said that the president was misquoted. There was no misquoting of the president. The issue that the DA story that doing well, you know, the ANC must learn from the DA. That's what he said. You know, let's not complicate that. Secondly, deputy ministers are part of the executive. Right. You know, he was wrong to say they are not part of the executive. They are not part of the cabinet.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
Now,
he mentioned that earlier.
You know, we are so bloated that the expenditure in the next 5 years is almost 500 million rand, almost $500 million.
Yeah.
That's the increment which we come to as a country, which we cannot afford.
Right. Athol, Trollip.
But it is bizarre.
Right.
It is bizarre that the president, you know, with South Africa, where we find ourselves in, you know, without a shame, with a straight face,
right,
that he can bloat cabinet to satisfy the GNU.
Because
the ANC has lost the elections. So he has to bring other people and bloat the cabinet at the expense of South Africans, which is not fair.
Well, let's test that. Athol Trollip, let me bring you into the conversation. Did the president even have a choice, given the political circumstances of the elections, in terms of bringing in all these other parties?
Good evening, Blaine. Good evening to your listeners. Of course, the president has a choice. The president told the country before the last election that he was going to reduce the size of his cabinet. He chose not to do that. He chose to simply add positions onto his cabinet. That was a choice that he made. Yes, it was about patronage and providing positions to participants in the GNU, we understand that, but we have brought a constitutional amendment to do away with the positions of deputy ministers, and I'll tell you why. Let me use the 2 current examples. First of all, when the Minister of Police was put on suspension, Senzo Mchunu, the president couldn't use one of his deputies because, as Samkelo said, they're not cabinet ministers. But they could have been promoted. The president could have promoted one of them to be a minister, but he didn't do that. He went outside of Parliament and outside of the cabinet to find Mr. Feroz Kachalia and appointed Feroz Kachalia and said he was an acting minister. There's no constitutional provision for an acting minister. So we now have 2 ministers of police and we have 2 deputy ministers of police. So that illustrates the fact that deputy ministers are worth nothing because the president has no faith in appointing them and promoting them. The second point I want to make is when Cassel Mathale told the Ad Hoc Committee that he had received no delegations, no job description, the question has to be asked, how do you evaluate someone's performance if they don't have a job description and they haven't been given any delegation? Which reinforces the fact that we have a host of people, all 43 of the deputy ministers, that we believe are redundant and that they don't deserve their positions because there are many, many more effective countries in the world that are run with cabinets between 15 and 20 ministers without any deputy ministers. I'll give you one last example, Blaine, before you go. I serve on a portfolio committee for monitoring and evaluation. And there are 2 ministers in the presidency and there are 2 deputy ministers. The Minister for Monitoring and Evaluation, the deputy minister that I serve with in my committee, if I got into a lift with him in Parliament, I wouldn't even be able to recognize him. He doesn't attend portfolio committees. He has no authority. He has no responsibility. He is completely redundant.
Nhlanhla Hadebe, is there merit to Athol's argument in terms of do we need to relook at the very least of how many deputy ministers we have in the first place or try to streamline it? Also, should we rather fix the issue of assignment of duties rather than an amendment on the Constitution? What's your take?
Well, my take is that perhaps we may have to look at the issue of assignments of duties by ministers to deputy ministers, because departments may vary from one department to another. There are, my take is that there are departments that you would have to have 2 deputy ministers, depending on the function. Depending at the core function of the department. But all in all, you cannot have cabinet without deputy ministers. It cannot work.
Karabo, hold your thought. I just need to take a call very quickly. 011-714-0677-7879. Kustas on the line for us. Kustas, what's on your mind?
Yes, good evening, Blaine, and good evening to your guest. Here's my question to Karabo. And I think let me appreciate what Athol has said at some point. To Karabo, I want to say this. This president is wasting taxpayers' money. And it's an embarrassment which I think needs not to be laid, to be just, call it swept under the carpet. At what point will the Democratic Alliance put a motion of conflict against this president? Because he serves at their pleasure. I can tell you right now, if it was not for the Democratic Alliance, this president would not last a week in that office. Seeing then that he's so easily wasting resources like he does, ministers, literally, deputy ministers don't even have roles. It's an embarrassment. When are they going to pull the plug and say, you know what, sorry, President, you have failed to be the manager of all these employees that you have appointed. Step down and let South Africa move on. Thank you for taking my call.
Kustas from Midrand, thank you very much indeed. Let's go straight to Karabo. Also, take your take on what Nhlanhla said.
Okay, first on Kustas, thank you very much for your submission. I mean, it is a fair observation that we have a bloated cabinet, which means that we could be optimizing the spending of the public's money elsewhere in other more meaningful things. And I want to make this point, Blaine, that again, that the president have a choice. The Constitution is the problem here, because this is what we're not discussing right here, which is why I think ActionSA's diagnosis is the wrong diagnosis with the wrong solution, because Section 93 says the president, Section 93(1)A says the president may appoint any number. So the Constitution doesn't curtail the number of deputy ministers that doesn't exist. And so even when the president does that, you can't fight him because the constitution says he can do what he likes, right? So that's problem number one. But he increased the number of deputy ministers as a firm decision to do one thing. It was not to satisfy the GNU partners. It was to ease the pains of the ANC and to satisfy the ANC, because all other coalition partners, GNU partners, parties are underserved. The only political party that is given an upper delegation of deployment is the ANC. On the question of whether or not ministers are deputy ministers are because there's no delegation of function, are useless. It must be a must. It must be a must that each and every minister must be able, within a certain period since assuming office, it must be a must for them to give delegated functions, because then we would do away with cases like we've seen with police, where people just, because the minister does not want to, that there's no law that says they must be able to do so.
Karabo, let me push you on the question
on a motion.
Yes, on the motion. Go ahead.
Motion of no confidence. Yes. On a motion of no confidence, the decision of whether or not we're going to have a motion of no confidence would have to be decided by the party's federal executive. Specifically because in order for the parliamentary caucus to move for such a motion, the party's leadership must have taken a decision to say they no longer want the GNU in its composition, and we're not there yet.
Okay. Athol, I'm going to come back to you to give you a right of reply. I just want to get a quick call in, and I'll come straight to you. Anati from the capital. Very good evening to you. What's on your mind?
Good evening, Brian. And good evening to everyone on the panel. So my question is to the representative of the ActionSA. I can understand the frustration of working in a portfolio committee and not knowing the individual supposed to be working with you. Do we not think then, and I think this is a question to everyone really, that this is one of those instances where the question is more how we hold people accountable for being wastes of space, quotation marks, in their positions, as opposed to a more extreme case for a restructuring of how government operates in order to shrink it down. Because we must understand, comparisons tend to be difficult with other countries that we might deem more efficient, because South Africa is very complex. And also South Africa is a much larger country than, let's say, comparisons with other European states, etc., etc. So I am of the belief that there is a need for deputy ministers, not just because of the constitutional provisions, but because of the complex nature of the issues that we face. So how then do we, or how do political parties look for ways to get more accountability from people, as opposed to more radical ways of trying to restructure government in ways that might prove disastrous at the end of the day?
And Archie from Pretoria, thank you very much indeed. Athol?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you very much.
Let me...
David, just hold on. We'll come back to you. Athol, go ahead.
Yeah, look, I heard Karabo saying that, we haven't made a proper diagnosis. We actually have made a diagnosis. All the political parties that served in the 6th Parliament and that are now serving in the 7th Parliament all said, and they lamented about it for a whole 5 years, that they must reduce the size of cabinet. And now we've got a bigger cabinet. So our diagnosis was that we cannot afford this. It's unaffordable. Our country economy, we saw what we had to go through with the budget. We just cannot afford to have 75 members in the executive. It is just such a huge proportion of Parliament serving in the executive. It's completely unsustainable. So what we're saying is that find some competent, capable ministers and make them accountable to their departments. It's not as if a minister runs his department by himself. The ministers have as directors general, deputy directors general. There's a host of staff and officialdom that supports a minister with their work. But here's another example that I want to use about why we believe deputy ministers are superfluous or redundant. Mr. Andrew Whitfield, my former friend and former colleague, he was fired 4.5 months ago. 4.5 months ago. He's been missing from his department. Nobody's noticed. The DA has not replaced him. Karabo says they're now getting close to finding a replacement. So that reinforces the fact that somebody who's been fired from a department 4.5 months ago has not been replaced. Nobody can convince any South African that deputy ministers are irreplaceable. These examples of Whitfield and the two ministers of police are classic examples why they are completely superfluous and redundant. And we are going to call on these parties and canvass them to support our constitutional amendment, to actually do something about the size of our executive and not just lament it.
Probably need about two-thirds.
Karabo,
just 1 second, Karabo, I'll come back to you. You probably need a two-thirds majority to get this over the line. Athol, David, would you support this?
I hope you'll give me time as well. Let me say this to you. As an opposition party in parliament now, as we speak, we are talking to people, the DA and Inkatha Freedom Party. Obviously, they can't, it's just a PR for them. They are benefiting. They are beneficiaries of what is happening here. So they can't blame the ANC. Because in the sixth administration, they've made noise about it. But now, because they are benefiting, there's blue lights now. They are happy with what is happening. Because as you know, the president, when a Minister of Higher Education, Kabane, was fired, they promoted Puti Manamela. Why Dr. Bushielo or Cassel Mathale, the deputy ministers, were not promoted to be a minister? Instead, the president went outside and got his own friend, Kachalia, which he used to work with in the United Democratic Front. He brought him in. Now we have an expense of 2 ministers. The other one is sitting at home. It's a fruitless expenditure. South Africa is bleeding. We sit in the police portfolio committee. Now we know, after we had an ad hoc committee, thanks to General Mkhwanto, that they are exposed, that ministers, after a year, they are not even delegated to do any job.
Right.
And between me and you now, that we have director generals who are accounting officers who are doing the job. Now it tells you can do away with a lot of deputy ministers. Some of them are known. It's true. And I'm saying to you, as uMkhonto weSizwe party, as an opposition party, we are saying the president as well has to be blamed in this fiasco which we find ourselves as a country. How do you have ministers for the whole year who don't have delegated powers? In fact, this issue of that, there's monitoring. Even the ministers are not more monitored in this country. It's not only about the deputy ministers. It tells you that this government, is job for pals. It's a job creation, the issue of ministers, and to satisfy the GNU appetite. Because, in the sixth administration, as you know, the Democratic Alliance was so vividly saying all the good things. Now, because they are enjoying the blue lights and the packs, now they are singing a different song. They are part and parcel of this bloated government.
All right, David, we've got your point. Let's get Karabo to respond, and then Nhlanhla, Karabo, to you first.
Yeah, thank you, Blaine. 2 things. Well, first of all, the point that Trollip makes about the fact that Andrew had been away for 4 months and nobody knows he's missing. You know why? There are 2 deputy ministers in the Department of Trade and Industry. You have Godlimpi, Uzugo, Godlimpi, and then you have Andrew, which is the point I made initially to say we don't need 2 of them. The reason why, and the president knows we don't need 2 deputy ministers, and the reason why he created 2 deputy ministers for each and almost every second ministry that exists is because if he didn't do so, then the ANC wouldn't have as much power as they had before. It's separation anxiety from power that we're witnessing here. That's the first thing. The second thing, when we were in opposition, it is true that we were vehemently opposed to a bloated cabinet. We still are, and we still speak against it, right? Yeah. The other thing that we spoke about, which I'll be frank about, is we also questioned the role of deputy ministers. The honesty here is there it takes great courage to be honest about how there's some things that when you are in opposition that you do not know until you have tested in government to know whether or not the position you took was the right one or not. Now that we know that deputy ministers, if they are the correct ones, for example, the deputy ministers we have, Selosi Tolo, Samantha Graham Murray, we have Asho Serupen in finance who's done a stellar job, Mimi Kondwe in higher education, I could go on. Because
Athol, now you know their
functioning,
names.
right?
Right.
I mean, he's always known their names. He was with us for a very long time in our party. So the point I'm making here, Blaine, in conclusion, is the point we must be able to be honest about here is the office of the deputy minister is important and can be used effectively, provided one, the right person is appointed there, and two, that delegations are a must.
Nhlanhla?
Let me respond to my fellow colleague, Honorable Skosana. If I may take you out of government for a second, to political parties. All political parties, almost all political parties, if you look at their structural setup of leadership, they have an incumbent and a deputy. If I may take the MK as an example, they have just appointed the second deputy president of the organization. Why? Because they feel there is a need for two deputies for that particular position. So it's not a matter of the blue lights and so on and so on, but it's a matter of principle that you cannot have an incumbent without a deputy to assist in performing the duties. Of all the former presidents of the Republic, from former President Mandela, former President Mbeki, former President Zuma, their cabinet, they had ministers and deputy ministers.
Point taken.
So it's not a matter of Inkatha Freedom Party supporting the existence of deputy ministers today because they are part of the GNU.
I got a minute. I got a minute left. Last word to you, Athol.
Very much. I just want to say that all these parties that do have deputy ministers will be very subjective and say their ministers are performing brilliantly. I could give you some great examples where I've been disappointed by some of their performance. But here's the point I want to make. Do you want me to give you an example? I've asked about an Eskom issue in Fort Beaufort in Iklesi with one of the deputy ministers, and it's been 4.5 months now with absolutely no resolution. So I want to make a point here. Local government, there is a provision for 10 mayoral committee members in a metro city. Provincial governments, there's a provision for 10 MECs. Why should national government have 32 ministers and 43 deputy ministers? If other governments can run their governments and run them according to their cloth and according to the prescripts of those of that legislation, national government should be exactly the same. But what we have here, it's all about patronage. And I think Kustas hit the nail on the head. He said we cannot afford this bloated government. And that is why we're going to move this constitutional amendment. It is too costly, too ineffective, and too incompetent. So we need to address a lot of things. Competence, efficiency, effectiveness, and affordability.
I've got 30 seconds. David, that's yours.
If Inkatha Freedom Party is comparing government with Vocal Party, in a Vocal Party, the deputy president of the party can act when the president is not around. A deputy minister cannot act when the minister is not around. So you can't compare the two. Hence, our president made it very clear that even the so-called, so many provincial government has to be reduced into 4. And this issue of the Dutch Roman law, it is what has put us into. My last parting shot with you will be, is bloated, R500 billion is too much. We cannot afford to have so many deputy ministers who can't act. We now know that they are passengers in government. You can do without them. We've been doing without them for the last 12 months in the police and having having two ministers is insane. We are sitting as South Africans have no jobs, but here we are creating jobs for PARS. We are creating jobs for GNU. GNU cannot say that they've got better deputy ministers. We must do away with this. We must make sure that this bloated cabinet should not exist. South Africans must tender. We cannot afford.
Right.
We cannot afford as a country to have people being passengers at our own expense.
No doubt
It's
this
insane.
conversation
The president
will
must stop
continue. 1 hour is not enough. I think we even had shorter time than that, but we will continue. We'll see how far ActionSA's private members bill gets as well. It gives us an opportunity to discuss this further. Thank you very much indeed to all our guests. Appreciate your time. All right, before we go, here's my take. And I once again want to talk about the Proteas women for a bit. Results aside, right? It was always going to be an historic night. And the build-up to tonight produced this beautiful feeling in South Africa. You would agree, right? After a long and hard slog, the women's national team persevered. And they rewrote South African cricket history by storming into the first ICC Women's ODI World Cup. And no doubt, there's fresh hope for a brighter future. And there's a lesson in that. Never give up. No matter how bleak the situation seems. For all these allegations we're hearing about from both the Nhlanhla Commission and the Ad Hoc Committee and the general rising cost of living, never give up, right? But like the Proteas women, it will take a collective effort for us to get over the line. The head and the heart need to come together for clarity of thought on the right path to take. Will this country come together around the promise of what it can be? Once again, sport has inspired us. So let's build on our best instincts and renew our will and devotion to the cause of the collective. And that's my take. If you miss anything on this program, then be sure to watch It's Topical on YouTube and SABC Plus. If you're watching a repeat of this program, then as always, the news continues. Unwrap Africa up next with Tembekile, followed by G20 Focus with weSizwe. Critical minerals in sharp focus tonight. Stay tuned. Until next week, my brothers and sisters. Take care. Bye-bye.